It has been nearly 7 years since the Myanmar Armed Forces launched a wide-scale clearance operation against the Rohingya, a Burmese Muslim minority in Myanmar's Rakhine State, in August 2017. International investigative mechanisms and legal experts have said that these clearance operations may have amounted to crimes against humanity and possibly even genocide. Since then, nearly 1 million Rohingya have been living in overcrowded settlement camps in the south of Bangladesh in extremely harsh conditions. 7 years on, and with the current conflict in Rakhine and wider Myanmar only growing more bleak, what are the prospects for safe return? What efforts have been made to seek justice for the Rohingya, and what do displaced Rohingya seek? This is Cindy Abata and myself, Katie Hetherington, and this is PILPG's explainer on the Rohingya situation in Myanmar's Rakhine State in Bangladesh. Now, shortly after the Burmese clearance operations in 2017, which led nearly 1 million Rohingya to flee their homes in Myanmar, PILPG launched an investigation mechanism supported by the United States Department of State to provide an accurate accounting of the patterns of abuse and atrocity crimes perpetrated against the Rohingya. This investigation focused on the collection of documentation from Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, home to the largest refugee camp in the world. The investigation mission's findings revealed clear patterns of abuse against the Rohingya, some of which stretch back for decades. Of the 1,024 Rohingya that PILPG interviewed, 20% were themselves physically injured in attacks. Nearly 70% witnessed their homes or villages being destroyed, and 80% witnessed the killing of a family member, friend, or personal acquaintance. The investigation found that Myanmar armed forces only targeted Rohingya civilians in these attacks, and non-Rohingya civilians were left alone or were evacuated by the armed forces prior to the attacks. In some instances, non-Rohingya civilians joined in the attacks against the Rohingya, sometimes with weapons reportedly provided to them by the Myanmar armed forces. PILPG's investigation therefore concluded that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the atrocities committed against the Rohingya may have amounted to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide.
It is clear from our intense legal review that there is, in fact, a legal basis to conclude that the Rohingya were the victims of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide.
That mission's methodology and findings provided the support for US Secretary of State Blinken's determination in March 2022 that Myanmar's armed forces had committed genocide and crimes against humanity against the Rohingya. Now, today, the conflict situation in Myanmar continues to deteriorate with a deepening humanitarian crisis that has only worsened since the military coup of early 2021. Violent conflict across the country has caused widespread external and internal displacement, and the UN estimates that today, almost 19 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. In Rakhine, fighting continues between junta troops and the Arakan Army, an armed military wing of the Rakhine ethnic minority movement, and Rohingya continue to be the victims of violence, displacement, inadequate access to humanitarian aid, and many other crimes. What then has the international community done to address these crimes? In September 2018, the UN Human Rights Council established the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar to collect evidence of the most serious international crimes and violations of international law since 2011, and to prepare files for criminal prosecution in national, regional, or international courts or tribunals that have, or may in the future have, jurisdiction over these crimes against the Rohingya. In a demonstration of international solidarity, in November 2018, the Gambia, supported by 57 other countries from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, filed a case against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice. The Gambia has alleged that Myanmar's atrocities against the Rohingya violate the provisions of the 1948 Genocide Convention. Further, in November 2019, the International Criminal Court's prosecutor opened an investigation into the deportation of the Rohingya from Myanmar to Bangladesh, as well as other crimes committed in 2017. Several cases under the universal jurisdiction principle have also been filed in Argentina, Turkey, Indonesia, and Germany. The cases in Germany and Indonesia, however, were dismissed in 2023, respectively for lack of suspects in their territories and jurisdiction. However, the investigations in Argentina and Turkey are currently ongoing.
So how far are the ICC and ICJ proceedings in reaching some form of justice for the Rohingya? Despite several visits of the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan and his team to the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh and the release of various statements committing to the investigation, no arrest warrants or notable strides toward prosecution have been made. For the Rohingya in increasingly dire refugee camps, it feels that no meaningful progress has been made. The ICJ, on the other hand, is making much needed progress. The ICJ ordered provisional measures against Myanmar in 2020, ordering Myanmar to prevent and punish genocide and not to destroy evidence. The case is now in its merits stage, where the Gambia is seeking to prove that Myanmar's acts in relation to the Rohingya, including killing, causing of mental and bodily harm, and forcible transfers, constitute genocide. The Gambia and Myanmar teams have submitted their first memorials and are preparing responses to be submitted to the ICJ judges. Notably, in November 2023, the Maldives and the group of 6 other states from Europe and North America submitted declarations of intervention in support of the Gambia. Once both parties have submitted their responses to the ICJ judges, the ICJ is expected to consider the parties' arguments and issue its judgment on whether Myanmar's acts against the Rohingya were in breach of the Genocide Convention. This will be a momentous decision in the pursuit of justice for the Rohingya. And what about the Rohingya who grow increasingly disillusioned with the international efforts at bringing justice to the Rohingya and repatriating them to Myanmar? PILPG has worked in the Rohingya camps since 2018, training the Rohingya civil society organizations to collect evidence of the 2017 crimes and creating and supporting connections between Rohingya civil society and international justice mechanisms. We have had the privilege of spending time with civil society activists in the Rohingya camps and have spent years working with fearless and brilliant Rohingya leaders and learning what justice for Rohingya looks like. The Rohingya community is disappointed in the slow progress of international justice mechanisms and deals on a daily basis with the fear of dwindling humanitarian support, as well as growing violence in the camps at the hands of, among others, armed groups, gangs, and Myanmar agents. Human rights organizations also point out that the community has little protection from this violence. The nearly 1 million Rohingya forcibly pushed out of Myanmar are now residing in the south of Bangladesh in 33 highly congested camps. The Rohingya's livelihood is almost entirely dependent on international aid, as domestic law severely restricts their freedom to earn a living or leave the settlement camps. In 2017, Bangladesh welcomed the Rohingya influx and expressed support for their survival. 7 years later, it seems Bangladesh has grown impatient with the international progress of the Rohingya's return to Myanmar and is increasingly calling for their repatriation. Bangladesh has engaged in several negotiation rounds with Myanmar and other regional actors to advance the Rohingya repatriation. Yet, alongside this, there continues to be a strong hope for an eventual return of the Rohingya back to their homeland in Rakhine State. While the Rohingya themselves also want to return to Myanmar, they point out that the conditions in Rakhine State continue to be highly volatile and dangerous for their safe return. During PILPG visits, we have learned that the Rohingya want to return to Rakhine State with dignity and with the full enjoyment of their human rights. For this reason, they continue to call on the international community to support their justice efforts and put pressure on the Myanmar government to recognize their right to citizenship and provide for humane living conditions in Rakhine State. To learn more about the events in Rakhine State in 2017 and the PILPG legal analysis of the situation, see the below link.